Good evening, everybody. My name is Bert Dicht. I am the Managing Director of Membership. And on behalf of Larry Ahern, Vice President of Chapters, welcome to our town hall this evening, our NSS Senior Leadership Open House on this July 20th, 2023, the 54th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing. So again, we welcome you to our series of space forums and town halls. And as always, I'd like to go through a quick agenda. We will be doing our virtual etiquette, a few NSS announcements, then the upcoming space forums and town halls, and then we'll get into a presentation of the NSS Excellence Awards. We'll talk to our leadership panel following that. And then before we close, we'll do a quick tribute to Apollo 11. I don't know if you've been following what's on social media, a lot of people presenting about the 54th anniversary. So it's kind of exciting doing it on this anniversary. So as always with our virtual etiquette, please feel free to submit any questions. It's best to use the Q&A function because that goes right to the panelists and we'll try to take as many as we can. We did get quite a few questions that came in as you registered. So we'll be asking some of them to the panel as well. And also feel free to use the chat function to ask a question. We just ask that you be respectful of the panelists and the audience because everybody can see that. So thanks again. We're looking forward to some great dialogue this evening, I should say. Always like to just give a promo to give to our cause. If you're enjoying the programs like these space forums and town halls, please donate to support NSS. I've already put the link into the chat. I thank everybody who has supported us in the past, and in advance, I'll thank you tonight. We really appreciate all of your support. NSS, of course, as you know, is a volunteer-run organization and a member-driven organization. So we appreciate all of your support when it comes to your donations. Thank you so much. As always, please complete the post-town hall survey. It only takes a few minutes. It's anonymous, and your feedback is very helpful in us in planning future events. And just in case it comes up this evening, I wanted to do a little promo for our office, and especially since, like I said, it might come up in the topic discussion and questions. But we did open our new office at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. We are in the building, the Center for Space Education, which is run by the Astronauts Memorial Foundation. So if you're familiar with the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, that's where we are, right off to the side of the rocket garden there. And I've got some aerial shots there so you can see where our building is. And that arrow is actually pointing right to where our office is. So we get a great view of the rocket garden there. You see our address there, mail code NSS, State Road 405, building M6306. And that's the Kennedy Space Center, Florida. And our phone number, 321-452-2448. I was talking to a number of people who called the office last week and they were not aware that we were actually in Florida. So it's given us a great advantage to be near what's going on with the space program. Already we've built some great relationships. So it is a fabulous place to have an office. And there just shows you what we look like inside. And with me there manning the office. And we also have a new administrator for membership, Jennifer Muntz. So you'll get a chance to meet her or talk to her if you do call the office. So there's an inner office and then there's an outer office, and you can see our big logo there. So it's really exciting with this new office. And again, it might come up in the discussion. So I just wanted to share that. And certainly if you're swinging by the Kennedy Space Center, let us know about that as well. We'd love to have you stop by the office. So with that, I'm going to go into what's coming up next with our space forums. We've finalized the space forum for August 10th. That's the astronauts astronaut scholars panel with the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation, and that's actually one of the groups that we've created a new relationship with. These are incredible individuals. So they'll be talking about the program, they'll be talking about what they do, and most of them are actually now working. We've got 3 confirmed. We're hoping to get 1 or 2 more for the panel. Then on the 17th, we have Melody Yasher, who gave a great presentation at the ISDC on 3D printed habitats on the moon. So you look forward to that. And we're working on September, October. As I mentioned last week, we're working with NASA at the Marshall Space Flight Center to get a speaker sometime in September. And we've got a whole list of great potential speakers. So we hope to have all of that wrapped up by the time we get to the 10th, and we'll be able to share that with you as well. So look forward to all that. We've got a great fall schedule. So thanks again for all the support when it comes to our space forums and town halls. So now it is my pleasure. I'm going to be introducing our CEO, Anita Gale. And Anita is going to be actually doing a presentation to our honorees this evening, Jerry McLaughlin and Gabriella Lindberg, for the NSS Excellence Awards. So I'm going to stop sharing right now, Anita, and then turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so very much. We don't have any slides for this, and I will apologize in advance if there are voices in the background. I'll explain a little bit later. I'm at a house that I share, a vacation house I share with some people. We have visitors. And one of the people here just learned that artwork she displays in a gallery in Houston, that that gallery earned the votes as the best art gallery in Houston. So there's a bit of jollity going on in the background here. Plus, we went to a couple of wineries where we are today. Anyway, so Excellence Awards. These actually were all queued up to present at the International Space Development Conference. And just through some communications, our honorees were not in the room at the award dinner when we planned to do this. So we're a little bit late and we apologize. It's my pleasure this evening to present NSS Excellence Awards to 2 outstanding volunteers. NSS is a volunteer-driven organization. We rely on the expertise, skill, dedication, commitment from volunteers across many areas of NSS operations. We have very few paid employees. These individuals devote countless hours in support of our mission. We created the Excellence Awards to recognize distinguished volunteer service to the society, and these individuals were nominated by their peers, fellow volunteers. So the first award goes to an individual who has proved himself to be incredibly versatile. He has made significant contributions to the Space Edge Academy Diet and Health Contest, the Membership Committee and Membership Working Group, and the NSS Roadmap Working Group. And he also currently serves as a regional board member on the board of directors, the NSS Board of Directors from the Mid-Atlantic Region 7. If there is a volunteer needed somewhere, this individual always brings his passion and ideas. It is an honor to present the NSS Excellence Award to Jerry McLaughlin. Congratulations.
I was told I mostly would hold up the plaque, which I don't think will show very well, but it is a very nice plaque. As you mentioned, I've enjoyed my time. I started with NSS after meeting Bill Gardner, a longtime L5 member, at one of the March storms. I have gone to the March storms pretty much every year since 2005 or so, because I do believe in space advocacy, but he persuaded me to join NSS and help with the contest, which we modified it a number of times. Our most successful contestant presented at the Arlington ISDC, also presented for the Rothblatt Award, and second place in that, lady in Hungary, who is also starting a company, 123, about personalized diet strategy. So that's the type of thing you hope to get when you have something like this to help someone up with their future. I also worked on the committee membership. Marty LaJoy invited me, Bert Dick the remarkable volunteers who help run this organization. And I will mention Ahern, Stewart, Barnhard, and Becker just work very hard and know everybody. So starting from scratch, I learned a lot of people and a lot of the history and story of NSS. Then I got invited by John Strickland to join the roadmap committee, which sort of weekly for an hour and a half or so, much like the membership meeting, kind of goes through the potential steps and barriers toward civilized humans in space. That very long book. He's a very hardworking, talented person, and we've been joined on that by other talented people, much like the membership committee, and great to get to know them. The board member, I kind of joined the local one. Diane Lothar, remarkable chapter leader, has held interesting sessions, often news as if we were down by the Cape like Bert is, and so forth. That's also enjoyable. And of course, it was very enjoyable to go to the Arlington one and meet many remarkable people and listen to many talk. And then actually in the Frisco, Texas meeting, Bill Gardner had developed a health tract, and I was one of the presenters on my idiosyncratic perspective, which was space, evolution, and health. I added a few things about diet, which I happen to have favor. So met Isaac and Gabriella. I met at Arlington, and Dale Skran I met. I also like the post-evening gatherings at the ISDC. That's a happy hour equivalence, and you meet truly remarkable people there. A space farmer, modernist comes to mind, and a big visionary who makes games comes to mind. But again, it's just a great, what you enjoy about a meeting is ISDC, and also working with other talented people is what you get if you volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Yes, super. Thank you. The second volunteer being honored tonight started out in the role of the NSS social media chair. This provided her the opportunity to learn about how NSS operated, and soon she was active in committees. Committees for example, for ISDC 2018 and 2019, space policy, space health, and strategic planning. She was also a mentor for student space settlement design competitions, which I know something about. And most recently, she completed a term as Vice President of Development, where her innovative ideas transformed how NSS conducts its fundraising efforts. And currently, she serves as an at-large member of the Board of Directors. It is an honor to present the NSS Excellence Award to Gabriella Lindberg. Congratulations, Gabriella. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much. This lovely object arrived in the mail. It was a very nice surprise. I didn't go this year, and it was really tugged at my heartstrings because I actually had started out by volunteering for ISDC 2018 back in LA, and over the course of 9 months, just kind of offered to fill in wherever needed. And NSS has a way of finding a place for you to contribute. And so it was everything from just getting content up on the website, coordinating with, I think there was 17 chairs that year. There was almost 250 speakers, researching bios. And I really felt like I got to know everybody. And by the time ISDC came around, it really felt like family. I felt very at home and welcome, even though I do not come from sort of a NASA background or have a sort of the similar background to a lot of the speakers. Everyone was just overwhelmingly easy to talk to, and everyone was so happy to be there. And yeah, I think ISDC was a big part of congealing how people sort of stay with NSS over the decades. One of the things that I really enjoy about NSS is that people have stayed over the decades, and you get to sort of see the history of space advocacy and how that's sort of changed. And it really was a much more of a dream, and then little pace by pace, it can become a reality. And there's a great duality I find with being able to sort of dream up this most what could seem just absolutely fantastical to many people, but to be able to dream that and hold that, and then at the same time come at it and get in the weeds of the nitty gritty and the engineering and the all the reality that it would take to make these things happen. And it's a really beautiful match. So here I am. I've been a board member for 3 years, and I was on the executive committee for 2 years. And as mentioned earlier, various other committees that I got to go around and see all the different parts. There's another great student, apart from the settlement design competition, I was also a judge for the student debates, and got to see people passionate at very young ages, surprisingly intelligent and able to talk about these topics. And then sort of lobbying with March Storm, as well as local with Oasis, and giving presentations at libraries. But so in general, I guess there's been a lot of changes at NSS over the last few years. So when I joined as VP of Development, they were going, for example, through a big database change, and we went through and made sure that all the database, the tracking could match the database, and able to funding data. And I started writing some letters and realized that I really love writing. So all this to say that what I love about NSS is that they managed to find something that you can be passionate about and that you can contribute. And it could be as far away from, agriculture and running a track chair on space ag to, graphic design. It's really nice. It makes people feel included in a group and a movement, and you're all kind of going towards the same direction. And I hope to continue grabbing people and finding their path to their passion. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you. All right, and I'm glad you got the award plaques on time. Sorry we couldn't hand them over personally, but thank you so much for being here and for everything you do. Okay, back to you, Bert.
Thanks, Anita. And again, congratulations, Jerry and Gabriella. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and look forward to continuing to do that. So I'll go back one more time to share my screen. And hopefully, again, I won't have that glitch show up. Let's see. There we go. Yep, works perfectly this time. So again, congratulations. And now we'll get into our panel for this evening. And this is what we're calling an NS Leadership Town Hall. We haven't done one of these in a long time. So it's a great opportunity to hear from the NSS leadership about what is happening. And our panel is 3 very distinguished individuals. You've met Anita already, our Chief Executive Officer. Also joining the panel is Isaac Arthur, our President, and Dale Skran, our Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. So they're ready to take all of your questions. We'll start off with some that just come from me and were submitted, but feel free to ask questions as we go along. That's what they're here for. So welcome, everybody. It's great to have you with us this evening. We know how busy everybody is. So let me just start off with an opening question about your roles and what you do and your main responsibilities. So Anita, how about I just start off with you?
Okay, so actually, I understood you want to know a little bit about our background also. I'm an engineer. I went into engineering in college at a time when women didn't do that. And I graduated with a bachelor's in 1973, and engineering enrollment of women passed 1% when I was in college. So yeah, I'm one of those. Went right out of college in 1974. Yes, I have that much vintage. Vintage is a good thing. And was privileged to work on the space shuttle program in Downey, California. In 1996, the Boeing company bought us and did what I saw Boeing doing to my neighbors in the Seattle area. They transferred us to Johnson Space Center, and then actually there's something else happened later. So I actually mostly live near Johnson Space Center. I can actually walk to Johnson Space Center. However, I'm not there right now. Most of you probably know what a snowbird is. They live in the north and go to Arizona or Florida. Yeah. Well, I'm a reverse snowbird. I live in Houston, and right now I'm at the reverse snowbird house in Yakima, Washington, right across the mountains from where I grew up. Space Shuttle ended 2011, and I was transitioned to Boeing commercial crew. We say I was retired, which means it was not willful. I was a senior project engineer. I'm an expert at what I do, not just saying. Doing all of my work on time. It was a fixed price contract, is a fixed price contract. The schedule slipped. My reward for doing everything on time was to get laid off. That just happens in this business, but that enabled me to do more things for the National Space Society. Also in 1984, with two other people, I started something called Space Settlement Design Competitions, which is now also a project of the National Space Society. So I brought Space Settlement Design Competitions into the NSS fold. And that is an activity for high school students literally all around the world. The finals will be held not this weekend, but the last weekend of July in the same building as NSS headquarters, and Bert will be there and be able to witness what we do with kids. And literally, we have kids go through a program that's like being on an industry proposal team. I've been on many of those. We have them design space settlements in the future and inspire kids in that way. And we find many of the students who go through our space settlement design competition program decide right there in one weekend, they decide to pursue STEM curriculum careers. And many of them decide to go into the space industry. Many of our volunteers for design competitions, this is our 40th year of doing this. Many of our volunteers started out as participants, and they're actually in the space industry because of that weekend they spent with us some years ago. I mean, we have NASA engineers who were NASA engineers because of the design competition. So I retired from Boeing Commercial Crew in 2016. I'm also a partner in an educational services business at Kennedy Space Center, again, in the same building. In fact, that company sublets space from the NSS office area, enabling NSS to have office area because we're selling some of the space. And I'm also a chief technical officer in a space startup company started by another NSS board member in Las Cruces. So what I do as CEO is try to provide some guidance for where the organization is going to go. And Dale Skran and I work very closely together. Dale is the COO, so he's responsible for the operations. I delegate a lot of things and I stay out of people's way, but monitor what's going on. I run the executive committee meetings where we make a lot of decisions about how the NSS runs. And we'll be happy to answer. We've got a beautiful list of questions. That's enough for me. Okay, Bert, back to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Anita. Very good. Why don't I go to Isaac? Isaac, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role as president?
Sure, Board. Where to start off, my name is Isaac Arthur. As he mentioned, I am the president of the National Space Society for 4 months now. I think it's almost up to 4 months. And my background with the NSS started about, I'd say 4 years ago, when they first invited me to one of the conferences, and then COVID hit. But ever since then, I found out almost right away that it was an organization that just fit me to a T. I've been interested in space exploration since I first saw, well, the shuttle launches and the, I shouldn't say landings, we only had the landing on MTV at the time. That was the only time we saw it, was the Apollo landing was on MTV. But I got interested in the space launches, and Star Trek, Doctor Who, all those other things kind of like filled me with the background interest in it. And when I got to college, I went into the physics program, and I was kind of sad to find out that you don't get to do as much space stuff as you kind of would assume being your major as a physicist. But I went on to grad school, joined the United States Army during the outbreak of the war. And when I got out, I didn't want to go back and pursue that academic career. It just wasn't for me anymore. Same for the military. And so I went into local government, and I found I missed actually getting to do any science. I hung out on a lot of forums where we talk science. I ironically bumped into a lot of the people I eventually met at the NSS. It's amazing how many members are everywhere involved in things. And I ended up doing a video talking about more realistic science fiction portrayals, how to give way for that old Star Wars sci-fi fantasy thing for something a little more Arthur C. Clarke accurate. And I did a little video on it kind of as a side hobby thing. And I got this little note back from YouTube that said, "You have a subscriber." I said, "What's a subscriber?" I had no idea what that was. But a few months later, I did another video and a few people liked it. So I did another and I did another. And a couple of years later, I was doing them weekly. And now 9 years later, it's become that thing I do with the NSS these days. And it's one of those things I found from the show is we try to aim for an optimistic look at what the future is going to be like when we're actually out there, developed, enjoying the place. Both the stages of going there and we're actually settled. And that's a lot less common than you'd think in science and engineering. Everyone kind of believes in a loose note. Everyone supports the goal, but very few people are actually out there working long-term and hard to advance space development as a concept, to make sure it's not just spaces about telescopes and satellites, but to actually do ISRU in situ development and make sure that happens so there's a place for us, not just robots, out among the stars. And so I fell in love with the NSS as soon as I found out that that was that group doing that. And it's the primary group doing that. And it's just such a perfect fit for me. And I think for so many people in my audience, this is the organization we wish you'd always been able to be part of before the internet was around to let us talk to people. So it is a really great honor to actually be the president of the National Space Society. It was completely unlooked for as an honor, and hopefully I do it some justice. But either way, this is a great time to be part of the NSS as we're finally getting to move back forward to space. So thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. That's a great story about how you got into those videos. Fascinating. By accident, right? Very good. So let me go to you, Dale. Would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role as the COO?
Yeah, thanks, Bert. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and I think Anita said what I did is the CEO sets the strategic direction and makes the big decisions. The COO signs the checks and signs the MOUs and runs the operations staff meeting and makes sure everything actually happens. And, keeps me busy. I got started in this a long time ago. I was one of those little tykes who collected scrapbooks of the Gemini program. And of course, I was very enthusiastic about Apollo. My dad bought a TV. We didn't have a TV. I saw the chat where Christine Nobby mentioned that they bought a TV, I think, for Apollo. And that was a big deal. My family stayed up all night, I think, to watch the moon landing. The other thing that kind of goes into the DNA, I think most of you know that we're the merger of the NSI, National Space Institute, and the L5 Society. And NSI was founded by Werner von Braun. And when I was about 12, I got to see Werner von Braun speak in Saginaw, Michigan. I honestly don't remember what he said exactly, but I was very excited about it. And I did shake his hand. So, read O'Neill's book. And then I had a kind of an early career with the L5 Society in the late 70s, early 80s. I was actually on the regional board. I worked with Mark Hopkins and Space Cause and Space Pack. I was the president of the North Jersey L5. I was pretty active. Then I drifted off into, startups and stuff. I had a job at Bell Labs for 17 years. In 97, I left and went to a couple of companies, Sun Communications, and then later on, the Sonus Networks. Later on, I had my own company, CMware. That was a lot like Pandora, but much less successful. So around about 2008, I went to an ISDC and there's this guy, Elon Musk, on stage. I was like, who's this Elon Musk fellow? This is really exciting what he's talking about. And I decided to get back involved with NSS because basically in 97, I kind of dropped out. I had my family and I had startups. And, when you're at a startup, if you've ever worked at one, it's not like a part-time thing. You spend a lot of time at the beach. That does not happen. I did stuff like fly to California every week on Sunday night for a board meeting at 9 a.m., then fly back on the red eye and drive directly to work the next day at Tuesday. I did that for a long time. Anyway, technically, like, I'm a software person, trained as EE. I've written high reliability code. My code runs on Air Force One and nuclear submarines. I spent a lot of time as an ITUT rapporteur. I have traveled to a lot of countries. I lost count at 24. And, I have a lot of experience working with the UN, or part of the UN called the ITU. And in fact, the protocols we developed are almost certainly being used in this call right now. So anyway, that's what I've done. And now I chair a whole bunch of committees. I've had a whole bunch of positions. I'm kind of a political junkie. I identify a lot with Isaac. I've been kind of off and on, been involved in politics in different ways. I was once offered a patronage job driving a mosquito spray truck because of my role in a school board election when I was very young. But I turned that down, I think, wisely. So anyway, that's at least part of my story. Over to you, Bert.
Thanks, Dale. It's great to hear all these different things about each of you and that you had met Werner von Braun. Wow, that's pretty cool. So let me start in with some questions and then of course we'll go out to the audience. And I think I'll ask Dale, since we ended with you, I'll start with you on this one as well. The space industry has clearly changed dramatically over the last 10 years. How would you describe how NSS has adapted to these changes?
Well, look, I don't think there's, the way I would say this is there was a time, maybe more than 10 years ago, where there was a substantial alignment between what NSS was trying to do and what the aerospace majors were trying to do. We supported the space station, we supported the shuttle. And, those things were, the space station almost was shut down one year. And it was only, I think, because of NSS's support and other space groups that we still have a space station. But at some point, everything kind of changed. And it took a while, but I think we're now in a position where we're much more aligned with the new space industry. And, many of our leaders actually work in new space. And, I think it's become clear, and just in case somebody lives under a rock and didn't notice this, but it's become clear that companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and so on, Rocket Lab, they are the future of what's going to happen in space. And, the other companies will be around, but their role is no longer that of leaders. And, I not to pick on Anita's, former company, but, if you look at Commercial Crew, you can see that Boeing is struggling, and it's sad, but that is the way we are. So, what we've done is try to align with that new direction. And I think the fundamental thing is the realization that although the NASA budget is very important, we support the NASA budget, and sometimes we're accused of being NASA cheerleaders because NASA does do a lot of good things, that we also are equally or perhaps even more so concerned with how to build a space economy that's independent of NASA. Over.
Thanks, Dale. Anita, I was going to say, since Dale brought your name into it, I was going to throw that same question to you.
So I'd like to add, certainly ditto on everything Dale said. I'd like to add that some of how we're adapting in NSS is we're bringing in new and younger leaders. We're bringing more technical credibility to the International Space Development Conference, and especially establish the Space Settlement Summit, which annually in November gets some of the thought leaders and actual hardware leaders who are working on actually developing that future space economy. We bring them together in the Space Settlement Summit in the fall, and that's, as far as I know, the only forum that actually does that. So NSS is actually enabling those startup companies in space to talk to each other and network.
And Isaac, you've obviously been able to observe a lot of these changes in the course of your show. How do you see that working with NSS as well?
I think in a lot of ways, while we always talked about well, one day the future will be space commercialization. Nobody really entirely believed it in the 90s and the knots, just because we had so many disappointments. We kept wondering when that next moon trip was going to be. And I was actually a big skeptic about Elon Musk and SpaceX. So whenever he comes out with an idea, no matter how crazy it is these days, or it seems that way, I always assume there's a good chance it's going to come true, because I had to eat a lot of crow after how well SpaceX did. And I did not mind eating that crow because it was so invigorating to actually see that moving forward. And I think that also breathed a lot of new life in the NSS, because we were the space development group. We were the ones saying, hey, let's not just put another telescope up there. Let's not do Hubble 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. So we have been reinvigorated as an organization because of space commerce having this new blood. And I think that's probably the biggest factor, I think, in how the NSS is going to continue to develop the next decade or so, as we just see that start rolling out.
Great. Let me throw this next one to you, Anita. And in a way, you've kind of touched on some of this, but what do you see as some recent NSS achievements that you're really proud of, that are laying a strong foundation for us?
Oh, you know, Bert, that I am very proud of the fact that NSS has opened the office at Kennedy Space Center. By the way, folks, did you notice the area code for our office? 321 phone number. that is the area code. Somebody at the phone company had a sense of humor. We get to benefit from that. Bert and Jennifer are providing much better service to members. We're not going to mention who the management company was, but the phones are getting answered. The mail is getting opened. We're actually seeing our membership numbers starting to rebound a little bit. We were losing them with the prior management company. And also we're enabled to see some cost reductions. We have storage units in Washington, DC. Dale and I have met in DC twice now, and loaded up stuff in storage units in DC. Which was our headquarters, was storage units and a mailing address, basically. And we've run carloads of NSS stuff down to the new office at Kennedy Space Center. Got Bert and Jennifer started with a lot of interesting stuff. And we're actually planning to get together in September at the storage unit and basically stop paying fees on storage units. So that's saving thousands of dollars a year for our budget that can go to, there are better uses of our membership dues than what we've been doing in DC. So I'm just, and there's so many opportunities for what Bert is finding, that we can do partnerships with other organizations because we're established at Kennedy Space Center. So that's a big one.
Thanks, Anita. Isaac, from your perspective, what do you see are great examples of NSS achievements?
I would say, kind of coming in new to the actual leadership role, that I have the good fortune to be here for one of our, and to no credit to me on this one, for the quote leadership, one of our best fundraising years ever, that we have that, a positive growth in membership, which is hard in the post-COVID era. So that's predating me, or kind of spilling over to me, and is very much something Anita, Dale, and many others were very involved in making happen, and they cannot be congratulated enough for that. But that is, I'd say, probably the biggest impact I've seen there is, again, like I was saying earlier, there seems to be a post-COVID desire to actually start meeting again in person, and everyone's very invigorated, and a lot of organizations have had the exact opposite. So that was a make or break time for us, and I think we definitely made it. And I'm very glad to be with the group now that we're past that.
Great, thank you. Dale, I'm going to throw that same question to you.
Yeah, I've been taking notes here. And I think the thing that immediately struck me is I've completely filled up my little notepad with big successes. And it's like we over the time I've been, last 5 years, we've taken the space settlement, the O'Neill Space Shuttle contest, from basically being funded by NASA to being self-funded and under complete NSS sponsorship. Huge tribute to everybody involved in it. We got $1 million from the Club for the Future. It's a huge endorsement of what we're doing. We're doing a lot of good with that. This is kind of invisible to most of you, but we've had a lot of new people in the policy leadership. We have a new policy chair, John Daigle, who comes to us from Air Force Intelligence. He's a great guy. doing great stuff. He's in DC right now, going and meeting people with George Curley. And, we're just doing great stuff. I used to be the policy chair, and I think we're doing more now than I was when I was the policy chair. So we did a workshop call in collaboration with NIAC on space settlement, refreshing the vision of O'Neill in 2021. And we're working on bringing out a book that you can all read, which will come to you as part of your membership when it's available. 2015, we founded the Alliance for Space Development with the Space Frontier Foundation. It's been a success. Some of our achievements, I think, are saving NEO-SM, which NASA probably would have killed last year if it weren't for us and the Planetary Society, kicking butt and taking names. And so you should all be proud of the support that you gave to that effort. I would say that the gapless transition from the ISS to commercial LEO has our fingerprints all over it. I mean, when we started this 3 or 4 years ago, you would go in and say, what? They would say, the staffers, like, the space station is going to be retired someday? Really? And then now what NASA is doing is virtually indistinguishable, except we used to say gapless and they say seamless. With COVID, we pivoted and we started doing everything online. So that's been, we were very slow to do stuff online before COVID, but it was a kick in the butt, and we just did a lot of online stuff, including these forums. It just all started, and we're like, yeah, this is great. We should keep doing it. And I guess the last thing is, I think recently, I think we had a great coup in recruiting Isaac Arthur to be president, which I claim I had something to do with. So thank you so much, Isaac, for joining us as your president, as our president. Take care. Over.
Very good. Let me take a few questions that came in, and I see one that's actually already in our Q&A that kind of aligns to some that were submitted, talking about the strategic direction and where NSS is going. But I'm going to start off with the question that was submitted by Carl. And, we've talked a little bit about the changes, but in terms of the NSS mission, what has changed since NSS was created? Has the mission been altered, or are we still on that same path? And I'll start with you, Anita.
Yeah, I think actually Isaac nailed it. It's getting real. It is getting very real. We actually know people who've been doing research on things like the economics and chemistry of creating products from lunar resources, fuel, air, water, consumables that can be sold in space. So that's going to be part of the cislunar economy. One of the questions asked about exploration, it's not about exploration anymore. It's about industrialization and commercialization. It's going to be about property rights and factories and using space materials for the benefit of humankind, getting new discoveries. So, and NSS has been dreaming about this for decades, and now it's really happening. We're right in the middle of it. Did that answer the question? It's kind of exciting.
Yes. Isaac, how about your take on that?
I'd agree with what Anita was saying, especially since she agreed with me. But I would say, unsurprisingly, one of the things I love the most about seeing this moving forward is the far more serious contemplation of how to do in situ resource utilization. But at the same time, there's a lot of other aspects to it that I hadn't even been thinking about that are now on the radar, and you realize, how did I not think about that? My predecessor, Michelle Hanlon, her area is space law. She is probably the greatest mind on that, or certainly if anyone else is there, tied, right? She's out there, and you never even think about all the huge issues that can come up with that. How do you say who owns this asteroid? Who owns this piece of space? Who owns an orbital path for a satellite? And these are the logistic things that aren't quite as sexy. They're not the Star Trek warp engine, but they're what you actually need to do to actually make this stuff happen. And all those tiny little niches that will help be the ecosystem that allows space development are actually starting to become clear and filling up with, I'd say, very brilliant minds almost across the board.
Thanks, Isaac. Dale, you've been part of our NSS strategic planning. What's your view on this question?
Well, Yeah, I guess I've been the chair and now recently the co-chair with Anita of the Strategic Planning Committee. And I think, with a lot of input from the Board of Governors and Carlton Johnson, we spent, probably about 2 years focusing on what I would call operational effectiveness. And things like the office, hiring Bert as the managing director of membership, are some of the concrete outcomes of that. The general vision was to increasingly professionalize NSS's operations, not necessarily to hire a professional, because sometimes professionals are incompetent, but to in every way, and this is an ongoing process, and it's about the kind of volunteers you have, it's kind of volunteers you give authority to, and some of this is like very. I'm just going to say that in the old days there was a tendency to just sit around the XCOM, which was like 30 or 40 people, and just we would have some project and somebody would say, let's form a tiger team, and a bunch of hands would be raised, and there was no consideration as to whether the people on the committee had the remotest capability of actually doing anything or any experience or knowledge at all. And so we're trying to actually go out and get volunteers who actually know something about marketing, for example. And now we have a great VP of marketing who's owned his own marketing company. So I think he knows something about marketing. So that, and there's more to come. That's a lot of what I'm working on. We have a new accounting system. We have we've got our own office instead of a management agent. So there's all these little things where we're making the operations more efficient. And I just did an AP run with our treasurer, Joe Redfield today, and it's so much better than what we used to do. We have software and we can control everything, see what's going on. We still have a ton of problems, but at least we know what the problems are. The other thing is, and this is more what the Strategic Planning Committee is working on now, is to take our sort of vision and mission and create a concrete, actionable strategy. Some of the strategies NSS had in years bygone, and we've done through a lot of exercises, were stuff like, convince everybody in the world that space settlement is our destiny. And the problem with that is, first off, it's impossible. And second off, it doesn't matter if we did or didn't. We still wouldn't be settling space, right? It's almost irrelevant. So we're trying to focus on a 10-year strategic vision. And we're focusing on 4 areas: planetary defense, space solar power, developing the cislunar economy, and space settlements. And I just want to say a little bit more about space settlements. That's something Anita and I care a lot about. And, we've been inspired by the workshop that we organized in 2021 to think that the time may be right to actually go and design an open source space settlement and create an open source space settlement design that you could really build. Nothing like these toy studies that have been done, the real deal. And, it'd be like a 10-year project, and it could be very exciting. That would really not be a volunteer project, but a global industry project. And when it's done, there would be a website you could go to, and anybody who wants to build a space settlement, a rotating O'Neill type settlement, could just take the plans and download them and go build it. And with the rockets that will be available then, it should be entirely feasible. That's a huge vision, but that's the kind of thing we're thinking about. Over.
I want to just follow up with that, Dale, because one of the questions that came in was, would the NSS be open to funding a space mission similar to the Planetary Society's light sail proof of concept? This sounds like something similar. Wouldn't you say that having an actual engineering project?
If you would give me permission, I'd like to answer that question. And the answer is absolutely yes. We've been kicking that around. The Planetary Society's done a really good job of coming up with projects. The light sail is a genius project. It's a genius project because it's good for space development, and it's great for robots in space, and it's cutting edge, and it's not that expensive that you can't really do it. And it's not so, we honestly don't have the money to do any of these things. But with a project like space, the solar sail, the Planetary Society has raised tens of millions of dollars. And it's great ideas, great projects generate money. If it's really good, people will give money for it. And anyway, so I'd love to do that. I'm thinking an open source design of a space settlement might be that project. But there could be other things, and I would encourage you to submit your ideas. Over.
Great. Anita, and your thoughts on that kind of idea?
So adding to what Dale suggested, what Dale said, I'm an infrastructure person. I was talking about space infrastructure back in the mid 1980s, and I have documented evidence of that, whereas didn't hear the word space infrastructure at a conference until just maybe 5 years ago. And that was because there was a panel, somebody on the panel saw me and said, because Anita Gale's in the audience, I have to say space infrastructure. You look at it, that was true. You look at how communities run here on the ground. And what we're talking about with space settlement is communities that just happen to be located in space. And basically, to run a community, any human community anywhere, you need the same things. There are a few things that are different if you go to the frozen Arctic North. There are a few things that are different that if you go to the desert Southwest. And there are a few things that are different if you go to space, maybe a few more things and more dangerous things. But literally, we need infrastructure. And you look around your neighborhood, and infrastructure is electrical power and transportation and communication and sewer and water and air and clean air. And I would like to see us reminding the space advocacy community that we're talking about developing infrastructure. We need to get that message out into industry through our conferences, that there's going to come a time when infrastructure benefits everyone. Having a place where you can just go and get water from lunar materials will benefit everyone. You don't have to transport everything off of Earth, and you can talk about that for many, many different commodities. There's going to be a time when we need to start divvying up who builds what part of infrastructure so that we have it. You need it in space, you need it all together. You can't just put a gas station somewhere and that starts a community. You need everything all at once. We need to start divvying up what do we need to have to start space communities and figure out who's going to do what, and then we all get rich. This is how it needs to work.
Sounds great. Isaac, does this type of project excite you as well?
Oh, absolutely. I have to say a quick funny anecdote real quick. When she mentioned that, we just recently wrote an episode called Interplanetary Infrastructure, and I got the idea while I was at the ISDC this year as one of our tracks, and I put up as an option for the poll, and the audience was like, oh, we love that. One of the questions we put up as a poll option of interplanetary infrastructure was, when do we start saying infrastructure anyway? And I was thinking to myself, that's the weirdest thing, because I really did use that term until about 5 years ago. So small world. Sure, I didn't hear it from Anita, but it must have made its way around a bit. Now, I mean, projects like this, very shortly after Dale and Anita asked me if I wanted to come on board, I'd suggest them the idea that we might start wanting to do more contests or more groups, as opposed to just having more classic regional chapters. That we have more focus type chapter concepts, parallels that would be like how to build the best Mars dome, how to build the best metallysis generator for asteroid, all those things, these kind of like field testable concepts, these open source ideas, these things that, to be fair, are in some ways interesting because they attract a lot of interest, a lot of capital and funding potentially. But because they just are the time is right to be able to start doing stuff like that. We can actually start having infrastructure on the table as a serious conversation, as opposed to before it was like, well, we'll just have Star Trek replicators by then, I'm sure. It's like, no, well, that'd be cool if we did, but probably not. And in the meantime, how do you build a dome? Who's tested this idea? Who has come up with the best generator to remove metals from, the lunar regolith? How do you build good space-based solar? What's that market look like? And these are exactly the sorts of things that the NSS is perfect for, because we have all that interest and enthusiasm, and people have been thinking about this stuff for decades. And now we can finally get out there, share that idea, recruit new folks who want to share their own thoughts and bring these ideas forward in a very serious and believable and buildable way.
I want to stick with you on this next question, Isaac, because it kind of ties into what you just mentioned, and Anita mentioned money there. We had a couple of questions related to space entrepreneurs, and a project like this does sound kind of exciting, but what are we doing in NSS in terms of providing some resources for space entrepreneurs. The question also asked about, are we planning any kind of training to help people understand what are the opportunities in these areas? So what do you think on that one?
Who do you want to answer?
Isaac.
I think I might actually put that one over to Dale or Anita, though, because we had a prize we just gave out for that, the ISDC, but I cannot remember all the details. And I was going to actually talk to Gabriel about those at some point, but I think they probably know more about that specific one. I can't even remember the name of the award, but the one we just gave out at the ISDC that Gabriel presented. Can I pass that to you, Anita?
Rothblatt.
Yeah, go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, so that was a Rothblatt Prize. I was going to mention something else. We have a memorandum of understanding with an organization in Brownsville, Texas called Expanding Frontiers. It is a space entrepreneur incubator. They train people to be space entrepreneurs. The founder of Expanding Frontiers is a board member of the National Space Society. So we have a connection with Expanding Frontiers and literally incubating and training engineers starting now in Brownsville, but folks anywhere can get engaged with them. So we're connected with an organization doing just that.
Great. Dale, anything you'd like to add on that one?
Well, look, yeah, I'd just like to say some of our Club for the Future money has gone to Expanding Frontiers to fund their entrepreneur workshops. I'd also like to say that some of the money's gone to the Space Element Design competition, which is a corporate simulation and is very much a way to help high school students become entrepreneurs. I mean, there's nothing like setting up a company to build a space settlement to get an idea of how this might work. The Rothblatt competition is really important. It's funded by Martine Rothblatt, which if you don't know who she is, she's on our board of governors. You should definitely research her. Really outstanding individual, a hero, a heroine, long before she was associated with NSS. Founder of SiriusXM, among many other achievements. So this is to get people it's called Space Settlement in Our Lifetime. It's to encourage people to develop businesses that will support space settlement. So really exciting stuff. We have other things we're doing. Bert can talk about the Career Center. I do want to tell one story. I mean, also, connecting with new space companies and entrepreneurial companies, which is something we've increasingly gotten good at, is important. And of course, a lot of our legislative agenda is designed to make sure that they are not strangled by taxes or regulations or unfortunate bad things, right? But I do have to tell you this story. So I was in this bylaws committee meeting. I'm the co-chair of the bylaws committee with David Brain Erickson. And Mike Snyder at that time, who's currently the assistant secretary and a board member, was a member of the bylaws committee. And, he was talking, and while we were talking, he was logged into the ISS and doing a 3D printing experiment. And so, as Anita says, it's getting real, folks. It's getting real. Over.
Yeah, you should
Dale,
mention
Mark. Go ahead, Anita.
Mike Snyder is one of the co-founders of Made in Space Incorporated.
Yep.
And actually was on the Forbes 30 under 30 list of entrepreneurs. Okay, back to you, Bert.
Oh, and I will add too, I know some people know about our program for that we call Pins in Space, where we actually sent some NSS pins to the International Space Station. And Mike was behind that effort. So we thank him for that. But Dale mentioned the Club for the Future, and I don't know how well our members know what's going on with that. Anita, do you want to touch on Club for the Future?
Oh, yeah. July 2021, then President Michelle Hanlon and I were asked to join a call that was hosted by Club for the Future, which is a foundation established by Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin. We had no idea what this was about. So y'all remember that Blue Origin flight where they auctioned off a seat for $28 million? You remember that? Yeah. Well, all of the proceeds from that auction were to go to this foundation, Club for the Future. And they expected about $6 million. They didn't know what the heck to do with $28 million. And what they decided to do was they selected 19 nonprofit organizations to each receive $1 million. And NSS is one of those organizations. So we are recognized well enough in, let's call it the new space community, that we were recognized as being deserving of one of these $1 million awards. And even though officially we were told, Michelle and I were told, when we were almost fell off our chairs that we get this grant, we were told there are no strings attached. We also heard the message that the aim of Club for the Future is to bring more people into the future space careers pipeline. They called it a pipeline. And we have been very focused in National Space Society on, well, we realize that $1 million is a lot of money. We also know $1 million is not a lot of money. Dale and I have both handled $1 million budgets in industry, and it's not a lot of money. You employ a few people and it's gone. So we have been very disciplined. We established a committee. Dale is on it. I'm not on it because I put in a submittal. There are people can propose projects, and Dale mentioned one of them for Expanding Frontiers. We also have 2 to run design competitions for students from disadvantaged areas. So all of the let's call them appropriations from this fund are being allocated by the committee for projects that will bring more people into the space careers pipeline, and not just engineers, but also, as mentioned before, we're going to need plumbers, electricians, and tradespeople to run communities in space. So it's very exciting that NSS is doing this. The committee is doing great work, and we're getting some attention from Blue Origin for what we're accomplishing. You want to add anything, Dale, since you're on the committee?
Actually, Isaac and I are both in the committee.
That's great. Yeah, Isaac. See, I don't go to the committee.
Yeah, the thing I'd like to add is that first off, if you look at your Ad Astra, I think the most recently out issue, the education issue, has an article on some of the first round grants that we made. One was to Expanding Frontiers, and Anita's kind of talked about that. One was to Steam Space, which is Holly Malier's sort of space settlement thing for kids. And another was to a group called Kids Read that distributes space books to Title I elementary and middle schools. So all great things. The other thing I want to say is that we are sort of balancing between internal and external projects. I'd say roughly half and half. And I think that, I don't know, I received some criticism. Somebody was like that, well, why don't we spend it all on internal projects or something? And some organizations have. We decided not to do that. We said we're going to pay it forward, and not just go on to all the money and, I don't know, use it to have fancy dinners at the ISDC or something. That would be offensive. So I think we're being, we're being very tight with the money. It's all separately managed. It's only spent on carefully vetted projects, not just on giving everybody a raise or more money for a bunch of things. And I think one thing I do want to mention that you're going to be seeing more of is we set aside a significant amount of the money for a project I call Inspire via Art. It's to replicate the efforts of the successful of Chesley Bonistel, the artist who inspired so many people to go into space in the 50s and the 60s. And Rod Pyle, the editor of Ad Astra, is the leader of that project. And we're employing a significant number of very highly rated artists to create a new generation of art to inspire interest in space settlement and development. Over.
Did we want to mention, since we mentioned Club for the Future, postcards from space?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, every Ad Astra has 2 postcards, and they're perforated. You get those out, put whatever artwork you want on the back, and put your address or somebody else's address on the front. Or actually, they can send the postcards to you at NSS headquarters, or follow the instructions, put a postage stamp on it and put it in an envelope, send it to Blue Origin or send it to Bert. In fact, if you send it to Bert, you don't need to put the postage stamp on it. We'll do that for you. These postcards will be sent into space on a Blue Origin rocket. They will come back with a stamp that says they were flown in space and go back to the address you put on the card. So you can actually fly your own artwork in space. And Club for the Future is they have a high priority on getting as many of these postcards into space as possible. We have NSS logo on the ones in Ad Astra. So find your Ad Astra and fill those postcards out, send them in.
Yes, absolutely. We've forwarded hundreds of them to Blue Origin at this point. So absolutely. And you should see the artwork from some of these kids. It's incredible that they put into these. So that's a great lead into a next topic. And I just do want to do a time check for us, because it's hard to believe we're 7 minutes after 10 o'clock already. And we might go, I might try to give about 10 more minutes of questions before, because there's so many. But this was a great lead into education. And you mentioned the pipeline. There were several questions related to education, and wanted to see what your take on, one of the questions is, how can we claim that space settlement, how can we better claim that the space settlement contest to children will help them in planning their career in space exploration? So I know that's an important aspect from what you're doing, Anita. And then there are several questions about materials for teachers and how we can help teachers. So I want to make that kind of those two questions, a broad topic on what NSS is doing about the next generation. And I'll ask each of you to maybe touch on that briefly. So I'll start with you, Anita.
Okay. So given that we found that space settlement design competitions really do steer young people into space careers, let's do more of them. I mentioned Expanding Frontiers. They actually have started a parallel contest. The space settlement design competitions are arranged with semifinals all around the world, leading to a finals. There's limited throughput on that. Through Expanding Frontiers, we started what we call the tournament, which means any entity anywhere can ask to do a tournament. We will help you set it up. You get 150 to 200 kids there, and we will turn them into little space science or space engineers for a weekend. I'll have or ask Dale to answer about Space Edge Academy and what they're doing.
Okay, Dale, I can throw it to you, and then we'll close out with Isaac.
Yeah, so some of this is kind of like the inside scoop, but it is not, I don't think it's been a lot of public information about this, or even to the members, but some additional grants have been made in the Club for the Future process that Isaac and I are involved in. And one of them is a grant to Space Edge Academy. And it's there's two parts to it, one that's been approved and one that I expect we probably will approve in the future. The first part is to sort of improve the fundamental technology of Space Edge Academy, move it under the NSS.org domain, and modernize the whole system. And that's actually, that work is sort of like, it's going on right now, and will come to fruition over the next few months. And then hopefully we'll do a follow-on to create some space settlement teaching materials for teachers and students. And the person who asked that question, I totally agree that it would be great to have these kind of materials. And we need to make sure that, we fill that need. And it's definitely something that NSS could do a lot better at, a lot more of. And we need to really focus on meeting that educational need. Over.
And Isaac, I saw your message there about some power flicker. So let me get you in before that happens, before you lose power.
So I would just follow up on that by saying, I guess what I would say on that is, if we can get more visible public sponsors from the industry to support the contest in an open public way, if you've got all these sponsorships lined up saying, hey, we work in this industry, we develop for this industry, we want this contest as the pipeline for our future workers, that lets a lot more, not so much kids, but the various mentors and teachers who have to get them involved in that project and put a lot of labor in, say, yeah, this is a good use of time. The kids just love it it's a fun project, right? But to actually get those mentors involved, you do want to be able to show them very visibly that this is going to be something that helps this student and the next student for the next year actually move forward into a career in space.
Very good. Thank you so much. We're getting a number of questions, and I want to try to get a few more in real fast. And there was one that I know that you liked that was submitted, Isaac, and let me see if I can find that question. About how will ordinary citizens be part of space exploration? Do you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, in that respect, it kind of is one of those situations. Say, 1 second. I beg your pardon. What do we mean by an ordinary citizen? Because almost everyone's got some kind of skill set that can eventually get them into space. We always talk about you have to have the right stuff, be the cream of the crop, to be a John Glenn or a Neil Armstrong, and that is still true for the moment. But to go from ordinary to extraordinary is very hard. But most people have some trait or skill that is able to be pushed on if they want it enough, if they're working hard enough for it. And the biggest thing to remember, though, is what we're aiming for, the NSS, is for space to be so incredibly ordinary, mundane, that no one says, oh, wow, what's it take to get to go to space? It takes $2 and a ticket. You know, what's it take to get to space? How much does it cost to go visit Earth? Because that's where people live there. That's what we're looking for, is that future where people who are completely ordinary find space to be ordinary. In the meantime, if you've got a skill set and you've got a passion for it, if you work to that end, if you really develop that and sharpen that and make that extraordinary, that is your path to space. That love for space and I love that skill is where you're going to find the fuel, the propellant to get you up there into orbit.
Oh, that's fabulous. I want to take a couple of questions that look like there were fun questions that Carl always comes up with interesting questions. And I'll ask each of you this one. Can you tell us what your favorite space event was? Something historical that you went to. Isaac, I'll start with you.
Oh, good God, that's a hard one because I actually I've never seen a rocket launch before at all, barring like private rocket takeoffs. I got to see Air Force One land one time at Wright Patterson Air Force Base when I was a student there, but I have never in my entire life gotten to see any of these things live take off. I have gotten to go to the museum there at Wright Patterson, Ohio, in Dayton, and if you've ever gone, you'll know how good it is. If you haven't, find the time. But that would be the space event I'd really like to see sometime next year or so, as an actual rocket launch. I've never been to one live.
Well, we'll have to have you come here. And as president, you've never flown on NSS One yet? Dale, how about you? A favorite historical space event?
Well, this is a very personal event. I think one of the rocket launches that had the most influence on me. And by the way, I'm like Isaac. I'm channeling it. I have gone to see virtually no rocket launches. I just recently saw one with my daughter, a Falcon 9, when I was visiting Bert this year. It's the first launch I ever actually saw. But the one I wanted to tell you about is when I was a youngin', maybe 12, 13, whatever. I don't remember if it was the Smithsonian or maybe it was Huntsville, but I saw a rocket launch. They had a plastic rocket they put liquid oxygen through, and they shot it up inside the building like 100 feet or something. And I ended up, the guy running the demo gave me the core, the plastic core. And I've treasured it ever since. It's on a shelf right over there behind me. And, it had something to do with making rocketry real to me. And it was also incredibly cool to think that, you could use plastic as a fuel and all that. So that had a lot. It meant a lot to me. Not a lot of people saw it. Over.
Very good. And Anita, any thoughts on your favorite?
Oh, yeah. Any space shuttle launch. I think I saw 4 or 5 of them. Was privileged to be in the astronauts' families area, relatively close to the pad for one of them, because I knew one of the astronauts on board. Actually, we went to college together. Anyone who went to ISDC knows who we're talking about because I introduced her as a speaker. And in my career, I was privileged to go anywhere at the Cape where a payload may go. I was in cargo integration, filling up that big cargo bay on the space shuttle. And I have crawled all over launch pads and the VAB and all over the place. And it was an amazing career and amazing experiences. And it was wonderful, and a real shame that the space shuttle quit flying.
Very good. So everybody, I know we're running out of time. I see there was one comment in the chat about someone who, I think it came from Angel. I see that Dale responded to you about volunteering. So we definitely want love to have you volunteer, and we can certainly respond back and see what opportunities there are for you. So let me ask one final question for everybody before we do our celebration for Apollo 11. And I'll make this as a message, for those members, because we just had Angel talking about volunteering. What's your message for members who want to get more involved in NSS? What should they be doing, and how could we help them? Anita, I'll start with you.
Well, that actually is a big question, and I have to confess, we've been there's been enough going on for us leaders in NSS that we haven't been focusing nearly as much as I would like to on how to find useful things for volunteers to do. So Dale and I have talked about this, about establishing a volunteer list that we could either have on a website or just have on standby in our own pockets when somebody volunteers, to be able to say, well, this committee sounds like it would meet your needs and be interesting to you, and get involved in this committee. We have a lot of committees in NSS, and so that's a very good question, because it's something we really need to do better at, is when people volunteer, finding useful things for them to do.
Yes, I years ago, I responded to one of those ads, and here I am now. So Isaac, what are your thoughts on that?
As recently as yesterday, I had somebody who's been a fan for a while who just joined the NSS ask if he could volunteer for anything, and I said, well, we got because he lives in LA. If you want us to volunteer at the ISDC, I'm just not sure what we do with them yet, but stay on standby. In the meantime, I store him for my show, because we use a lot of volunteers on there to go through the script. So I suspect I could always use more volunteers. The NSS can't use them, but I know the NSS can, and I love the idea of having those just there for people to see. Kind of like those projects we talk about, you could do a Mars design project, something like that. Have those projects there to see, because part of an organization is saying, what can this organization do for you? But in some ways, what people really like to see with organizations is, what can you help me do for you guys? What can we do together? Give me something to do and excel at. And especially with a group like ours, where the sky is not the limit, we kind of want to be able to say, here you go, here's a project to work on. And I think that that's probably one of those areas we really should focus on in the near future, is just finding those volunteer projects that can actually usefully, meaningfully let people get involved and get things done.
Very good. And Dale, I'm going to let you have the last word on this.
Lucky me. Look, if you're like kind of new to this, I mean, look, the answer people always go is, oh, join a chapter. I'm not sure that's the first place you should look. If you want to get really connected to what we're doing, go to March Storm. We have it in March every year in DC. If we do virtual meetings, we do in-person meetings. If you can come to that, it's a great experience. I know some people are far away. If you're on the East Coast, you can drive there. I really, really recommend you do it. And we also do virtual meetings. So I think getting involved with that stuff, it's an experience. It's like almost a life changing. We do the best training of anybody, much better than the Planetary Society. If you like to write, if you're interested in policy, the policy team has an essentially infinite amount of demand for people who are actually willing to work and do something. I just did a call for volunteers for the Space Settlement Advocacy Committee, and we got some volunteers, but more people want to volunteer for that. That's great. We need an assistant treasurer. If you have any kind of accounting or budgeting background, or just if you're willing to learn, and you're responsible, please let me know. Dale.Skran at NSS.org. DALE.SKRAN at NSS.org. And then, look, generally speaking, and I don't mean to insult anybody, but the kind of volunteer that's the most useful, and I don't want to exaggerate, is somebody who has some leadership skills, some management skills. There's a certain kind of volunteer that expects to be told exactly what to do in minute detail. And, we honestly don't have that much demand for that kind of, some organizations have a lot of people that like lick stamps and put them on envelopes or something. We don't have a lot of volunteer work like that. So, I think if you are a person who is a self-starter and likes a challenge and is willing to learn, we got also the IS team always needs more people to do and whether you're willing to learn, if you have any kind of background in computers, web stuff, whatever, we got, again, virtually infinite amount of work there. I mean, in other words, if we had 10 volunteers, we could put them to work. If we had 20, we could put them to work, so don't be shy, hold back. But I'm going to say one last thing. Every once in a while, I get somebody who says, I want to volunteer. I want to be put in charge of X. We already got people in charge of X. Okay. We want somebody who's going to actually work. I'm sorry to say that. And, we don't need somebody who's going to sit and order people around. We want somebody who's going to actually do something. So thank you. Over.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dale. Well, I want to thank our panel first for taking the time out to be here this evening and share your thoughts about NSS, where we are, where we're going, and some of your own experiences. But also want to thank you for all you do for NSS and expanding our frontier and helping us fulfill our mission. So it's a pleasure to work with you all. And it was certainly a great pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. So thank you all so very much. For everybody out there, I know we had a lot of questions that maybe did not go answered. What I'm going to try to do is we'll try to get with our panel and get these answered and written out so that we can send them out. But there were just so many. And of course, we're already past our usual end time. So thank you all so much. Again, it was just outstanding. What I want to do now is these last few minutes, just do a quick tribute to Apollo 11. So why don't I, before I actually get into the tribute, I might as well show a few things here. I dug out some of my relics here, and so I don't know if you can see this. So I found a National Geographic from Apollo 11, and then I'm sure some of you have always saved these things, Time Magazine as well, and one of my favorites is a New York Times from the day they walked on the moon. So that's one of my favorites. So I'm sure all of you have some of these things as well. I was just going through it, and they, every time you move, you have to make sure you have it packed and safely to go. But it just reminds us of what that meant to us that day. So let me get back to my screen here, and what I'll do here is, again, this is the 54th anniversary of Apollo 11. And I remember distinctly where I was. I was 10 years old when we landed on the moon. And it was a Sunday afternoon, 4:17 p.m. Eastern time is when Tranquility Base became active. And then Armstrong and Aldrin, Neil Armstrong actually made the first step on the moon at 10:56 p.m. Eastern time. And I remember going outside and just looking up at the moon and thinking, wow, there are people on the moon right now. And that inspired me. From that moment on, I was hooked and led to a career in aerospace and obviously connecting with the National Space Society as an example. It was just a fabulous inspiration. So I know a lot of us feel the same thing about this. I did appreciate some of the individuals. We did kind of a little survey for people about sharing their Apollo memories. I was going to try to share those this evening, but we just didn't have the time to do that. But maybe we can create something around that, because there are great stories about people, and even those who weren't born at that time, sharing how important it was and the legacy of it and what it meant for them. So today is also International Moon Day. It's also Space Exploration Day. The theme for International Moon Day, of course, was beginning the journey for humanity, beginning the lunar journey for humanity. And the theme emphasizes educating the public about how crucial it is to conduct sustainable lunar exploration, certainly something that NSS is behind. So I think I want to close, if you have a few minutes. I found this video on YouTube, and it's a really great one. I would definitely take a look at it. It's called the Apollo Flight Journal, and it really it follows the entire descent to the surface of the moon. So I'm not going to show all of that right now, but what I like about this one is that it actually has transcripts of each of the communication between mission control and the astronauts. And then there's also, there you go, you can see them doing that. There's also an altitude indicator, so it tells you how far they are. So they're here to go for the descent here. So I'm just going to take it a little bit further, and I always get goosebumps as they get closer to the landing here. So let's just follow this through. Hope you don't mind about a few minutes. I'll go a little bit further, everybody, so we don't have to wait too long. So now we're about 8,000 feet above the moon.
Separate 129 feet per second. T-go's good. Raj, T-go's go. We have position 2 on the LR. Raj, position 2, all flight controllers, 20 seconds to go, no go for landing. Eagle, you're looking great. Coming up 9 minutes. We're now in the approach phase, everything looking good. Altitude 5,200 feet. Flight controllers, go no go for landing. Retro, go. Fido, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. Ecom, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for landing. Altitude 4,200. You're go for landing, over. I understand, go for landing. 3,000 feet. Top alarm. 1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. Same time, we're go. Flight. Okay, we're go. We're go. Same time, we're go. Flight Federal right on real good. 2,000 feet. 2,000 feet. Into the ag, 47 degrees. Roger. 47 degrees. American looking, Bob? It looks okay. We're about 4.5. Roger. Eagle looking great. Your go. Altitude update now. Altitude 16. Roger. 1,400 feet. Still looking very good. Roger, 1202. We copy it. How you doing, Control? 35 degrees. We look good. You're fine. How about you, Telcom? Go. Guidance, you happy? Go. Fido, go. 23. 700 feet, 21 down. 33 degrees. 100 feet down at 19. 540 feet down at 30. And at 15. Attitude home? Okay, at home. Think we better be quiet. Right. 400 feet down at 9. Okay, the only call outs from now on will be fuel. Stay forward. 150 feet down at 4. A 66. 30, 6.5 down. They're tagged on horizontal velocity. 300 feet down, 3.5. 47 forward. 1 minute. 1.5 down. 70. I just had on that. 50 down at 2.5. 19 forward. Okay, Bob, I'll be standing by for your call out shortly. 3.5 down. 220 feet. 13 forward. 5 forward, come down nicely. 200 feet. 4.5 down. 5.5 down. 660, 6.5 down. 5.5 down. 9 forward. Low level? Low level. Good. 20 feet. 100 feet, 3.5 down. 9 forward. 5%. 105. Okay, 75 feet. That's about good, down a half. 60 seconds. 60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. That's 30 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Right shadow. Stand down for 30. 4 forward. 4 forward. Drift into the right a little. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Forward. Good. Ready? Contact light. Okay, engine stop. APA at a descent. Power control both auto. Descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. Port 13 is in. We bad shutdown. We copy you down, Eagle. Okay, everybody, T1, stand by for T1. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Thank you. You're looking good here. Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute.
So again, it just is just so exciting, even watching it. I don't know how many times I've seen that, but hopefully everyone got a good thrill. And it reminded you of that incredible accomplishment 54 years ago, and why we're all doing what we're doing today. So on that note, I just want to thank everybody for participating this evening. As always, I want to thank my colleagues, Fred Becker and Larry Ahern. Thank our Excellence Award winners, Jerry and Gabriella, and of course, Isaac, Anita, and Dale. Thank you so much. For those of you in tonight's time zone, wishing you a great evening. For those of you in tomorrow's time zones, have a great day, and of course, a great weekend. We'll see you again in a few weeks on August 10th. So we hope to have a great session for you, another great panel with our astronaut scholars, the future of this profession. So with that, everybody, I'm going to wish you all a great evening. And again, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.